Well, Seth, this is an amazing place. I work frequently with the Israel Antiquities Authority when I'm in Jerusalem. Man, this feels like home. This is an exhibit from the Israel Antiquities Authority in collaboration with them. Tell us about it.
Yeah, I mean, we're really fortunate to have the opportunity for the Israel Antiquities Authority to send over their artifacts to build an exhibit here at Museum of the Bible. So this is really their space. But it also means that they've sent over all these items that have been dug out of the ground in Israel. The kind of precision on the objects is fantastic. I mean, you're able to kind of go face to face with a lot of items to see rich imagery, to see just objects that are sculpted. As you read the book of Joshua, Judges, and so on, you see this conflict of when the people go into the land, don't adopt their practices. And yet when you're living with people, like we do today, in culture, these different cultural influences rub off on you, and you have to decide, what conflicts with my faith or, religion. Well, the Israelites were doing the same thing, and we can see pottery from the ground here in this example, where we have, metal that was bent in the shape of a snake. We have, palm trees on that you can see on the pottery, and of course, palm trees were a symbol of fertility. So you see that even the Canaanite practices of calling out to the gods,
The fertility goddess, and
you can see how that was part of even the culture for the Israelites as they were struggling through that. So I think that's one fascinating thing, about this whole area, is be able to be face to face with this cultural influence.
Seth, you showed us the ancient Canaanite civilization. Now I think of Israel's enemies, number one on the list probably in the Old Testament times are the Philistines. Now we have some Philistine exhibits here as well, which is pretty fascinating. Tell us about it.
What we see is there's definitely this tension between, the gods of the Philistines, and in this exhibit we have a really nice display that the Israel Antiquities Authority has brought over with some of the items that are used in their practices with the gods, as well as some of the larger practices that are used even from the Canaanite civilizations. This is even more generally than just the Philistines, which is a little later.
Seth, like you mentioned, what tension, because Israel worshiping the one God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and they are literally surrounded by pagans on every side, whether it's the Philistines, the Edomites. Wow, talk about pressure to stay true to the one true God.
Yeah, and those diverse influences, throughout their area are going to influence even their own thinking as they, as they sort through what does loyalty look like. We have other altars here, and as you read the Book of Kings and that whole period of after the divided kingdom, you have this struggle back and forth. One king is faithful; he tears down the altars. Another king does what's evil in the sight of God. In time, you had the Assyrians and the Babylonians become kind of these ruling powers.
The regional powerhouses.
And that what the Bible tells us is that it's this struggle, between good and evil, and the people's choices whether to be loyal to God or not, and adopt the customs of outsiders. That this is what leads to God's anger, that He raises up these other nations, to punish them and eventually lead to exile.
It's pretty amazing, Seth. This is in Washington, D.C. These amazing exhibits. Look, I'm in Israel all the time, and these are the best exhibits you will find this side of Israel. Let me tell you, it's amazing to have this in Washington, D.C. as an American right at our fingertips here at the Museum of the Bible.
This is a stone that was used for the walls around the Temple Mount area during the Roman time. So this was a specific style of a Herodian block with how they carved it. That's how we know.
During the time of Herod, the Second Temple period. Wow, this is the real deal.
And what we know is that in the first century, tensions continue to build up. You have the Roman rule throughout the land, and this looks very different dynamics in the area. But in Jerusalem, around the temple, is where it's hottest. That's where you have the greatest amount of conflicts. That's where you read about Pharisees having this view, Sadducees, priests, Herodians, And you have also a community, withdrawing onto the Dead Sea like the Qumran.
Yeah, John the Baptist, I think of, going out there. And the temple was the center of worship, so also the center of conflict.
It was. People had these different views, as well as the followers of Jesus, and they have a different version of what they're looking for in the return of God's rule than these other groups. Now, so this is sort of this hotbed that's smoldering during the first century. Later on, after the time of Jesus, we know that the Romans came in to kind of squash this potential rebellion amongst the Jews on three different occasions. The first major occasion we have, the temple is sort of destroyed and the blocks are pushed over.
Titus, 70 A.D.
And so this block is one of those that would have been pushed over to kind of destroy that whole Temple Mount area.
This block is over 2,000 years old, this block of stone.
Yeah, no, that's right. And so this comes from an area right next to in our current time, the Wailing Wall, where Jews go and pray.
The Western Wall, of course.
The Western Wall there, and then also in this exhibit we've got other items from those different times that we had the rebellions and the Romans came in, culminating in the Bar Kokhba revolt.
What you have here regarding the ancient history of Israel, first temple period, second temple period, is just outstanding.
Each exhibit has its own value, but certainly here we're really grateful to the Israel Antiquities Authority for bringing over all these items, setting up this exhibit, and giving us a first-hand peek into what you can't see outside of Israel.
And this is just a tiny piece of just this one exhibit. It's amazing. Seth, thank you so much. We will be back.
Up next, see how the Bible has helped shape America from the very beginning as we continue our tour through the fascinating Museum of the Bible in Washington, D.C.